I'm Riley. I'm the CTO of XONEFI and advisor to Spartan Blockchain.
Yeah, my name is Zane, and I'm the lead iOS developer for XONEFI, and I've got a little consulting business on the side as well. Yeah, and I'm excited to be here today.
This is the first university conference, though. This is quite an exciting thing. I've been to ETH Denver, and
I haven't been to conferences directly, but actually me and Riley a couple of years ago, we went to a competitive coding competition called a hackathon at the University of Waterloo called Olymp, where we were able to win one of the prizes working with some technology there. That was my initial exposure into blockchain and how I met Riley and how I realized I really knew that this guy was going to build something that's going to change the entire world.
So being a part of the Spartan Blockchain, which is Michigan State University's blockchain club, we have some close ties with the University of Michigan. They were the first ones to reach out and say, hey, we're thinking about starting this Midwest conference. Would you guys want to be involved and help out? And of course, we said yes. We're trying to decentralize internet connectivity. Our project first started with this Michigan State University professor. He had this idea a few years ago. He came out with a white paper for it. The idea is essentially you can share your internet in a decentralized way without having to rely on third-party providers to give you that internet. You can basically be your own internet service provider. He came up with this idea, and then he reached out to me to help out and develop the prototype, and that's where we're at now, developing the prototype.
When I met Riley, it was under the context that he was fixing another company software called Jackal Labs. He actually fixed their API, which is their server that allows them to run their blockchain. When I met him, I realized that I should look into what this guy's doing. So I've been working with XONEFI for about 4 months on the iOS app. And it's crazy to think that we're allowing people, these could be people in Nigeria, in Lebanon. I have family in Lebanon, and it's very difficult for them to get access to the internet. For us to allow people to create their own internet and host their own internet and allow anybody to connect to it, we think is going to bring a lot more equity and opportunity to these underserved communities. And as an example, in Lebanon, we don't have centralized electricity because our government doesn't provide it. So local people have their own solar panel grids in each community. And we're thinking that is exactly how XONEFI could work. Riley was able to get our routers to be able to connect to Starlink satellites. So all they need to do is get Starlink dish. And then with that one Starlink dish, if they use our software on their routers, they can actually set up internet for entire communities with just one dish.
Right now, we partnered with this school in Nigeria. So essentially their setup is they have a Starlink router, and that Starlink router goes in and talks to the satellites and gets connectivity. Then they have a third router, like the router you have at your house. So that would connect to the Starlink, and then now that router has Wi-Fi. So now you are able to then take your mobile device or your computer, and you then would pay this router that is then connected to the Starlink via the blockchain and get connectivity that way. So right now, most people have fiber optic running to their house, and that's how they get connected to the internet now. You could still use the same solution. You could still plug your router in, even with the fiber optic, but with the Starlink, you then eliminate the need for any of this underlying infrastructure. Running fiber throughout a neighborhood, you don't need that anymore. You can basically just plug the satellite up, get your router, and then ultimately get paid now from sharing your Wi-Fi. You can get a Starlink right now and get connected, but right now it's like $500 for the normal Starlink dish plus a $99 subscription to Starlink. So running our software on the router that's connected to the Starlink, you're able to offset those costs from that $99 subscription, so you can then rent out and recoup some of that $99 back from getting the Starlink subscription that you're.
In addition to that, if one person has a Starlink and they have a router that is distributing the internet from it, you can set up something called a mesh network, where now I can take my router, and if we download XONEFI software onto my router, I can connect my router to somebody else's router, and now I don't even need Starlink, and I can get internet from that person, and I myself can now take the internet I get from somebody else and provide that to somebody else and create a chain of routers all stemming from this route link to be providing internet. And it starts with Starlink, but it can go much further than that. Riley got his amateur radio license, which allows you to broadcast up to what, 2 miles?
It allows you to be on some certain frequencies that the normal person, it would be illegal for them to have access to those frequencies.
With a larger broadcast radius, with something like a radio license, you could go a lot further than that. So we're trying to build a future where it's not just controlled by a few companies. If we think about all of the internet connection and all of the messages and how much we depend on data to go from one place to another, that's a lot of power just to be in the hands of a few companies. We want a world where anybody can be providing internet and where anybody can connect to the grid.
We have a token, XONEFI token. So essentially, when you are being this internet provider, you can charge your own fee for your internet. So that's where you get this value from. So you're basically setting your own subscription price, like you would be paying monthly to a T-Mobile or a AT&T. You are now the T-Mobile or AT&T, and you can set your own price and get paid back in those XONEFI tokens.
And then that benefits the end person getting the internet, the end user as well, because say I pay for 500 megabytes per second from AT&T. We all know I'm not getting 500 megabytes per second. When I'm streaming Netflix and it's buffering for 5 minutes, you want to tell me I'm getting 500 megabytes per second? So with our model, you only pay for the internet you use. You don't just reserve some amount that you know they're never going to give you. So now that puts pressure on the ISPs to create better pricing and quality of service models for their customers, because we're creating competition against them where people have a much more fair and transparent mechanism for how they pay for their internet. We're giving people more options based on what they need, because also you're not using internet every second of the day. There may be a time where you only need to use a small amount of it, and you should only have to pay for the small amount that you're using. And there are times where you need it quickly, and there's times where you don't need it quickly. So for the times when you need it quickly, okay, maybe you should pay a little bit more, but for the times where you don't need it quickly, you should be able to pay for a cheap amount of data. You should be able to pay a cheap price and have slower internet speeds if you so desire. But the way that the current pricing works, it's made to pressure people into long-term contracts where there's not a lot of flexibility and no transparency into how you're getting your internet.
I think it's use case for anybody that's underserved or in a lower income area to be able to give them the freedom that they need to be able to, one, get connected, and two, get paid to give people the option to get connected. Riley Xcook, RILEY XCOOK on everything basically.
The best way to probably reach me would be via email. You could use zane.aridi@gmail.com or just look up Zane Aridi on LinkedIn. That's ZANEARIDI. You can find our company, XMesh, on the internet.
Xmesh.org.
Xmesh. Yeah,
XMESH.org. Thank you, and get connected.